The World Telugu Christian Summit. Again, I was privileged to attend this. Sybil joined me for this conference, so she flew down from South Africa a week later, and then I met her there the Sunday before this conference could start. It was an absolute privilege to be in Thailand. I haven't been there before, so it was good to go there in advance and be able to just feel the land, get a feel of the food and of the people and of the climate and everything else. So just to let you know, for the week that I was in Korea, the midday temperature was roughly about 24 degrees, went up to about 26, 27 maximum, which wasn't much. The evenings were nice and cold, it was cool, around about 16, 17, wasn't too bad, it was very, very manageable. And so I landed in Thailand that Sunday evening, around about 10 in the evening, I guess, or maybe just before that. And it was okay in the airport. I didn't realize how hot it was outside. So as I left the airport to go outside, to meet the shuttle guy that was going to meet me there, and he stepped out of the airport, I couldn't breathe. It was stifling hot. It was about 10 in the evening. I think we stepped out of the airport maybe about 10:30. And extremely, extremely hot and humid. At that point in the evening, it must have been roughly about 32 or something, with a humidity level maybe much higher than that. The morning started off about 27 in the morning, and we stepped out, you actually felt the heat hit you. And so you stayed indoors. Fortunately, the room that we occupied in the hotel, I'll show you just now, had air conditioning. We were fortunate as well, we had two rooms in our hotel room, was two rooms. So one was like a lounge and a kitchenette kind of a thing, and the other was our bedroom. And both rooms had individual air cons. So we are very privileged in that sense because we would never have survived. For those of you who know my health as well, I am a seasonal asthmatic. Many people don't know that about me. And so hot and humid weathers like this and change in temperatures will affect me. And it did, because I started immediately as I entered Thailand, started wheezing and needed my pumps and all of that. Fortunately, I carried all of that with me. And I was just on the pump for the entire time I was there in Thailand. So it just goes to show the level of humidity that the country has. But that said, so the global, the World Telugu Christian Summit is part of the Global Christian Telugu Ministries. Now let me just say something here, because I may have said it in the past. Please forgive me, I'm saying it again. You may ask yourself, but Pastor, why, a World Telugu Christian Summit, okay, you Telugu, we understand that I have Telugu roots. But why? Well, one of the things that piqued my interest about this particular group is that it is the only linguistic diaspora in the world that is organized by language. So every other diaspora group is either by region or by nationality. The Telugu diaspora is purely organized by Telugu-speaking people and made up of Telugu speakers, and it is the only diaspora in the world that is organized linguistically. And it has a very, very rich heritage. Last year they celebrated 25 years in Durban. So this year was the 26th year of existence. So it's been around for a long time. And there are Telugus around the world. South Africa, the stats show we got about 5,000 Telugus. There may be more. We don't have the language, revived and all of that, and people speaking much. But one of the first churches that started amongst Indians in South Africa started amongst the Telugu-speaking people. John Rangia, the Baptist missionary and pastor, started the Telugu churches out in the North Coast. So we have a very rich heritage. So it's a privilege to be a part of an organization, a group like this. And of course, part of it is that I am Telugu-speaking, but I don't speak the language, but identify as Telugu coming from Andhra Pradesh. But there are many other reasons for that, so I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So it is a privilege for us to be there and to be able to engage in the conference in Bangkok over those 3 days. Sybil and I were there a few days earlier than that, so we had the privilege of moving around Bangkok a little bit and acclimatizing. So the word in Thai for hello is sawadi. Sawadi. The S is silent there. It's Sawadi. And of course, it also goes with the greeting like this. Now, I know some of us get turned off with this greeting. We think it's Hindu. It's not really Hindu. It's just a praying hand, right? And it's also the other important thing is that different parts of this palms put together indicates the certain level of the person that you are greeting. So, for example, you're greeting someone on the same level, you most probably just be these 4 fingers that you'll touch. And if it's someone of a very high or much higher status, the thumbs will touch your nose. And if it goes much higher, then it's the thumbs that will touch up to your forehead. So that's kind of an indication of the level of greeting to the person that you are. So, Sawadee. You'll hear everyone saying Sawadee. But then you'll also hear the ladies, for example, greeting, they'll say Sawadee ka. So when a lady is greeting anyone else, they say Sawadee ka. And if a man is greeting anyone else, they say Sawadee kap. And so you'll find that interplay between ka and kap are common in the greetings of exchanges. So here's something. I think the ladies on Saturday got a bit of a dose of this. So let's say it together. Okay, we all can't say Sawadee ka or kap because it's men and women here. So we'll just say Sawadee. Sawadee? Sawadee, yeah. So at least you learned some Thai. Maybe at the end we'll do some more. I'm sure I'm going to thank you at the end. So just remember the ka, if a lady is saying hello, she'll say Sawadee ka. If a man is saying hello, he will say Sawadee ka. So this is a picture of, I think that's from our hotel window, where we were looking, we are staying in a place called Bang Na, a little away from Bangkok. But that's kind of the picture from our window. And then this picture I stole from one of the guests that stayed, that was there much longer than us. We left immediately, but they sent this picture the night they went on a boat trip. This is Bangkok at night, Pattaya. Pattaya, yeah. So they went to Pattaya, and they went on the boat trip. So it's beautiful. In fact, I got another picture that we took from our hotel window. I didn't find it on time to put it here, but it's absolutely, absolutely beautiful. So Bangkok, Thailand is a beautiful place, especially Bangkok itself. That's the hotel we stayed in now. This is not the best picture. I tried to get a picture of this. This is an amazing hotel. It's just called the Havana Grand Hotel. It's some distance away from Bangkok in a place called Bang Na. But it's Christian-owned. In fact, you can't see too much, but see the writing up here. It actually says, Jesus loves you, which is a very bold statement being made in Thailand, which is over 90% Buddhist and just over 1.2 somewhat percent Christian. A very strong statement. And this, in fact, we saw the owner of the hotel spoke much later. He came towards the end of the conference. But he has a powerful testimony as well. And while we were there, Sybil and I was there from Sunday till that following Sunday. In that period of time, there were at least 3 or 4 other Christian conferences that took place in this hotel. Absolutely amazing. In the middle of a desert, you say, there's an oasis. And here's an oasis of Christianity that's flourishing. They have their own church in the hotel premises as well, and they have regular church services. They have their own outreach programs and all of that operating from this hotel. And this is not the only hotel he owns. I believe he owns more hotels as well. So if you're ever going to Thailand, but this is a bit far away from the center of Bangkok. But so that's the place we lived in. And that's the conference venue. So fortunately, we lived in the hotel, and the conference venue was able to accommodate us in, and well planned, as you can see. There's a South African delegation that was there. I think you might recognize some people from last year. Pastor Rodney and his wife, Laura, and the daughter, Azaria. Dr. Phillips, Philip Kripanandan, and Sybil and myself. So we were there from the South African delegation. So it was good to at least have 6 of us from there, from here. And they were very excited, extremely excited that as South Africans we came. And I want to tell you, they did everything to make us feel welcome. In fact, majority of the program was like in English, because just to accommodate us to be a part of this, because most of them speak Telugu. That's the entire group. This year we had about 120 some odd people or more at the conference. So that's kind of the best picture we got there. So yeah, they called a few of us to sit in the front. So all of us who belong to certain councils and whatever made us all sit in the front, and Sybil and I got separated, so she's out there somewhere. Pastor Ronnie and his family, Rodney are there, and a few of us. So yeah, again, very esteeming of who we are, the value that we bring into the conference, and kept on commenting about the conference that they had last year. They still say it was the best conference ever that they've ever had. So we'll take whatever they say. We can't complain. So it's quite a large group. In fact, I think this was a Sunday. There may be one or two people that have already left by then, but the majority of the people were here. The praise and worship, they had a group from Bangalore, called the Firebrands Music Team. Dr. Paturi, through his contact, brought this team. So the entire team came down to stay at the hotel. So they stayed at the hotel, but they didn't mix with us too much. They just the praise and worship and went. And quite a big team. Guitarists and keyboard people and backup singers and everybody. So they actually flew the people in and they stayed there for those 4 days, 3 days. And then, of course, the Indian folk also had a number of people singing over time. And that brother there is a very accomplished Indian musician. Writes his own songs, a number of very, very accomplished guy. And of course, Pastor Rodney was asked to lead all of the hymns. So every session we had at least one hymn being sung in English. And he led that. He's a very powerful singer, so it was good to have him lead that. Some familiar faces, you might recognize Dr. T.V. Thomas. He was there and did a wonderful presentation on witnessing to the Hindus. Dr. Paturi and his wife Shobha. And Dr. Livingston Gade, Apostle Livingston, still well and going strong, 92 plus. He's going on for the Lord. He was very sick last year. After our conference, he thought he was going to go. God kept him, and he's still around. And let me tell you, I got pictures of him on the 2 days after the conference with his jeans and all in his wheelchair and going around doing all the touring. In the boats, out the boats, in the parks, out the parks, shopping, whatever. So he's still full of life and energy, and he recognized me. When I went to greet him, I just said, Namaskaram. I just greeted him. He says, hey, Pastor Louis. His mind, that's how sharp his mind is. Absolutely. I mean, he's still got it together. He speaks, he prays, and he's well taken care of. So good to see him. This is the owner's son to the hotel. So he's one of our special guests. He spoke on the first day. That's the representative of the ambassador to Thailand from India. He could not make it, but he sent his representative. And this guy, I just forget his name now, but we need to pray for his salvation. He's a Hindu. And so when he came with this, you can see the sense of, he says he's also been searching. And when he came into our audience, the sense of being in a place where he could sense the Spirit of God, And so we need to pray for his salvation. Yeah, like I said, this guy's dad was there, but I didn't get the picture of him, a good enough picture. The theme of the conference, there were 23 sessions of this particular theme. So they chose the theme, and we started at 9 in the morning. So breakfast was before that, obviously. We started at 9, and we finished off, according to the program, we should finish off at 10. And of the 3 nights of the conference, we finished at about either 10:30, 11, and the last night about 11:45. They like to talk. And I just couldn't understand it. But that's how their programs run. But a deep spiritual input. And so the theme was in his victorious footsteps from 1 John chapter 2 and verse 6. He who says he abides in him ought himself also to walk just as he walked. And so that was a theme that ran through. So all the main speakers, we were at 2 in the morning, 1 after lunch, 3 in the small seminars, and then 2 again in the evening. So at least about 8 of those sessions per day, just talking around this particular theme. And so some of the things they covered in the theme was walking in love, walking in faith, in hope, walking in the light, walking in the Spirit. That one I knew, but they never gave me to preach that one. I was hoping when I heard the guy preaching, it was also Galatians 5. When I heard the guy preaching, I'm saying they should give me that to preach. Easier. But I was actually asked to preach walk in holiness. And so I put 3 dots there. So many, many more around this particular theme. What's amazing is that some preached, good expository, exegetical sermons. Others preached sermons that were more narrative, or also sermons that just drew from their practical experience. So we had a wonderful range of kinds of sermons being preached. Some of them just related a number of incidents and then tied it in, to the portion of Scripture. But again, to see, now remember this is one language group, okay? were scattered around the world. They say they're in about 150 plus odd countries. And each group is making a difference where they are. Now that is the beauty of the body of Jesus. I said this last week, I'm saying it again. Not that we need to get lazy and apathetic, but we must celebrate that God is doing His work around the world in different ways and with different peoples. It's absolutely amazing how someone in Australia, a Telugu person in Australia, is doing a part, it's kind of a ministry. And a person in New Zealand is doing different ministry. A person in Kuwait, a person in Lithuania, Cambodia, different parts of the world, even in South Africa, contributing to the spread of the gospel. Souls being won, the church being edified. And so it's absolutely amazing to see what God is doing through the nation. Let me find my place here. So I won't dwell on this too much. Let me just move on to the next thing. So one of the things I was asked to do, besides asked to preach, I also led the second day when we had the guests coming in. So they gave me that platform to lead that day, to be the program coordinator. And then I preached one session. And one session on the Sunday, they asked me to share a little bit about the work in South Africa and Africa. So as you know, when they were here, we instituted the Africa region of the Telugu-speaking people. And South Africa is its own South African Telugu Council. So we got that, and we got the entire body formed. But one of the benefits of this is because of the context of the Telugu people around the world, especially those in the first world countries, they are very well resourced. And so they are looking at ways of helping churches around the world. And so when they came to Africa, they asked me, what is it that we can do for the church in South Africa or whatever? So there are lots of things I still got on the table that we need to pick up on, but there were three things that we picked up on immediately. One was, out of last year, they fully funded 6 students to study for their master's, MA in theology at an overseas institution. So we have 6 pastors at the moment in South Africa who are busy studying for their masters in theology, fully funded. It's a 2-year program. They finished their first year program already. They're entering the next half. Well, in September, they would have started the second part of the program. Then we had leadership training done here in our church in July and in other centers around South Africa, with 2 other, one in Johannesburg and one in the North Coast. And that's going to repeat itself, all right? And that's going to go on. That's going to be kind of ongoing thing. And then the Telugu language classes started last Sunday. This Sunday went by at 8 in the evening. So the person who was teaching us is from Chicago, living out there. And so their time is earlier. Our time is at about 8 in the evening. So at 8 in the evening, we have about 12 people who've registered for the classes, so the conversational Telugu being taught. One of the reasons for that is so when we go to these meetings, we can at least greet and talk and at least understand something. But it's also one way of recapturing our own heritage. And we're hoping that this will grow, get bigger and bigger and will continue. And there are many other initiatives. So when you see this, look at the bigger picture, how God uses the Telugu people scattered around the world, come to South Africa and help us to train and upskill teachers and pastors. And we're hoping this year to enroll another 3 or 4 people in the program. Again, fully funded, paying in dollars. So you can imagine, that kind of a benefit that benefits the church here in South Africa and other things that will take place. So just two highlights for me and Sybil, I think, at this conference. One was to meet this family, the Poole family, who are Telugu. So the wife is Telugu speaking, and that's their daughter. And they're serving as missionaries in Cambodia. Now you think of a family from Cambodia coming to a Telugu conference. I mean, I was shocked to see this family there, right? And so they're very involved in discipleship and evangelism and spreading. Now remember that Cambodia as well is more a communist, Marxist, Buddhist country. So that kind of a mix. And so it's not very easy to be able to spread the gospel there, to be living in the country. So you want to know what Telugus are doing around the world, and it was good to see this family come and attend the conference, and this also share with us about what God is doing with them and through them, and how they're discipling people, being able to speak the language, disciple people, live amongst the people, and bring people to Jesus Christ. Now, it's not about being Telugu, it's about being Christian. So that's where we leave the distinctiveness out and we come to the main issue. The issue is that these are Christians who are living there and sharing the gospel. So we will, in fact, they wanted to connect with us again. Just the day before they left, we could leave. The lady came up and spoke to me and said, listen, we need to connect and just to be able to exchange some ideas and discuss more. So I'm hoping to do that. And so I put the map there so you can get an idea of where the country is. And you can see close connection to Malaysia right at the horn of Southeast Asia there. That's where it is. Of course, surrounded by lots of countries that are very Buddhist, Hindu, animist kind of religion. Of course, influence with communist China and, of course, Russia further north. So keep this family in prayer. I was quite impressed to see a family from Cambodia in this conference. Now, if you thought that was amazing, this was even more amazing. To see a family from Lithuania. Lithuania is a former Soviet republic. All right, so there's it there. It's part of, there's Russia. They used all of these used to be part of the USSR. After it broke up a little bit, Latvia, independent, Lithuania, Belarus. So Lithuania out there, close to the Black Sea, also the Baltic Sea. This pastor's name is Radiant. That's his name. From Andhra Pradesh as well. Thin, short guy, but I'm telling you, dynamic. He can talk. And he can go on and talk and talk. I mean, we listened to him that night and he was just so radiant. It was late in the evening. And that's his family. So that's his wife. So he's married to a Lithuanian. That's his daughter out of that marriage. And I think this was a family friend or a member from maybe his home country. She came and joined them or possibly living with them. I never got to know who she was. I didn't speak to her. So they were together all the time. So a little bit about Pastor Radiant. He grew up in Andhra Pradesh, obviously, a Christian. And his father had a very large church. And so in his mind, as he was growing up and preparing for ministry and all that, in his mind it was that he was going to be the pastor of the church, of that church, where his father was. And God called him to leave and to go. He didn't know where he was going to go. And God called him to Lithuania. And so he goes to Lithuania and he settles down in Lithuania. He meets this lady, they marry, and then his father dies, so he comes back home. He comes back home and he wants to take over his father's church and all of that, And his wife is learning the language and everything else, and she's learning the culture and all of that. And God tells him, no, this is not where I asked you to be. I asked you to be in Lithuania. And so he goes to Lithuania and he says, there's an Indian who lives in the subcontinent, the cold in Lithuania and the culture and all of that. And he's the only brown-skinned person in Lithuania, living there and amongst his people. And then the Lord started using opportunities in Lithuania for him and opening doors for him to start sharing the gospel. Now, beside it being a cold place, it's also a very cold place. Very cold and hard to the gospel. And slowly he started making inroads in the community to such an extent that he is moved out of the house where he was living in, bought a very old house, and they moved into another property, very large property. Renovated inside, built a church. So they built a church to accommodate between 150 plus odd people. At the conference, he's telling us the church is now growing so phenomenally in Lithuania. He's the only Indian person. His wife is Lithuanian. The rest of the people are Lithuanian. And his daughter is obviously mixed. The only ones, and they're preaching the gospel, people are coming. And where he lives is very far away from the main towns. But people are all coming. Now he wants to break the church and make it bigger. This local school invited him to come and speak to the most senior students, just to talk to them about life. And then the teacher, the day before that, told him, tell them your story about yourself. So when he went in, one of the first things the students asked him was why he was so brown, why he looks the way he looks. So he told them he had to tell a little white lie. He told them that what he did was, as he was growing up, he drank a lot of chocolate, he had a lot of chocolate. And so that chocolate color is now what he's got in his skin. And that can't change over time. Well, he said it made much more sense, and I laughed longer. I actually enjoyed it. But what happened was he started sharing his testimony. A couple of weeks later, they called him to speak to another 2 grades. And a couple of weeks later, and he says he's been given an opportunity to preach the gospel in a place where they don't allow you to preach the gospel openly. And he says the teachers are all there. And they are organized and they're inviting him. So finally, he spoke to the whole high school group. Then they invited him to speak to the primary school children. But he says people are hungry for the gospel. Now here again, it's not about one Telugu speaking person. That's true. But it's about one Christian being obedient to the call of God and going into a place in a community where the gospel is almost dead and reviving and bringing people to the saving knowledge of Jesus. I mean, what a powerful testimony. Just being there, it makes you excited. You're listening to these stories of what God is doing. And so remember the Didla family, Pastor Regent and his family in Lithuania, that God will use them in a special way. A little bit about Thailand because we want to pray as well. Pray for Thailand. Thailand, of course, one of the main, they're Buddhist. And of course, all over you'll find Buddhist statues and little pagodas. They also call it church. They call it church for worship. Chapel. They call it chapels for worship. You'll find those pagodas. You'll find altars outside businesses, outside houses, and huge altars, not small, all gold overlaid and everything else, right? And the other thing about Thailand is that they are very loyal to their king and to the royal family. In fact, you can be jailed for quite a lengthy period of time, in fact, maybe even life imprisonment, if you stood on their notes, on their money, because the king's picture is on it. And so wherever you go, in any town, any place, you'll find huge portraits of the king and his wife. In obscure places, you'll just find it there. So all over the place. And all gilt-edged and all of that. So that's they're very, in terms of that, very loyalist, very nationalist, and very deeply religious. In fact, they don't speak English. English is very rare in Thailand. In the schools, they all speak just Thai. It's only now that they've started changing it because Thailand is a tourist destination. They realize the importance of English, and they're starting to now introduce English in the schools. So they don't speak English. Buddhism is over 90%. They're Buddhist. But they have a mixed sense of Buddhism. In fact, it's more Hinduism kind of. Now, please, Hinduism and Buddhism are 2 different things, right? So they have a mixed sense of Hinduism wrapped up in their Buddhism. So they may not be pure Buddhists, but they classify it as Buddhists. So over 90% of the country is Buddhist. 2.1% Islam. Now that is the Malaysian, they're very close to Malaysia in terms of the bottom of Thailand. They connect with Malaysia, and so that's the influence there, 2.1%. And we've seen, especially the place we visited after Bangkok, we've seen a large number of Muslims in that place. And then Christianity is 1.3%. Thailand is not anti-Christian. If anything, they say that they have 5 official religions, and Christianity is one of them, by way of its percentage. So Islam, Buddhism, that, and there's two other religions, that Sikhism and one other thing. So there is not major resistance to Christianity. The resistance is more spiritual. The resistance is more spiritual. And because of that, you get the persecution, other things coming through, like in India. So there's a lot of spiritual persecution, spiritual oppression. And so there is not that level of freedom. And people are very cautious. They want to be Buddhist and they want to be something else. So there's no settle the two, the two. So our prayer needs to be for this nation. We met a couple. Sybil and I sat in at lunch with a couple that are actually doing work, a white couple that's doing work in Thailand, discipleship and church planting and all of that. So it's good to see people doing that kind of work in Thailand. So continue to pray for the church in Thailand, for the little that we saw over the 1 week that we were there. To see the Christian activity is quite encouraging. To see so much of Christian activity taking place was very, very encouraging. But there's a need for us to pray, and there are levels of persecution that takes place in places like this. Yeah, and so I say thank you for that. And so we'll say Kop Kun. So again, Kop Kun will just means thank you, but of course to add the suffix to that, you will have to say either Kop Kum Ka or Kop Kum Ka. Right? So if you're a gentleman, you'll say Kop Kum Ka. And if you're a female, you will then say Kop Kum Ka. So I will say Kop Kum Ka. Thank you for listening. I do pray that this would encourage you. One is that your pastor is accountable. He's gone, he's coming back, and he's reported. Not gone on a joyride and coming back and has gone to have fun, but obviously gone and seen ministry and then allowing to impact me and then to inform you and impacting you as well, so that you pray well.